So good evening, everyone. I'm Lucy Gray, the co-chair of the Global Education Conference, and there's an obnoxious twinging going on in my background because I have some sort of notification on that I can't turn off. I have no idea what it is on this computer. Anyway, I'm here to introduce Pam Allen, who is speaking, and Jennifer Estrada, who are from LitWorld, and they are speaking on behalf of Education for All, a new strand that we have sponsored by the Global Campaign for Education U.S. chapter. Thank you, Ed Greger, for your support and for bringing Pam and Jennifer to us today. So I'm going to get started in a second with everything, but there are a few things that we need to go through ahead of time. I did start the recording, so we're in good shape. We have a couple conference reminders. We have help set up for people who want to ask questions and that sort of thing. If you can use Blackboard Collaborate, obviously you're watching this. There is a conference lounge where our volunteers are hanging out. We also can answer questions on the front chat room of our website. Again, we're on Twitter. Please follow us and use the hashtag GlobalEd13 to continue the back channel conversation. There will also be a survey following this presentation that we'd love for you to take the survey and give us some feedback for future conferences. And we also are looking for outreach partners, organizations like Taking It Global, you might have heard earlier. They're one of our outreach partners, and they help us get the word out, and we have their information on our website. If you'd like to be an outreach partner, there's a link for you to join us. Schools and nonprofits are encouraged to become those partners. And we also want you to continue the conversations post-conference in our discussion forum, and there's a link there for you. Moving on to the next slide. We want to thank our sponsors and supporters, IRN, Global Campaign for Education, United States Chapter, EduChange, Adobe, VIS International Education, Science for Us, EdWeb, EdSurge, and Blackboard Collaborate. Without your support, these wonderful events would not happen. So thank you for making this a free and inclusive event. So now we're going to do something kind of fun that we do at the beginning of every session. We ask everybody to say where they are in the world. And I'm going to give everybody whiteboard privileges right now. And you're going to take the tool in the left-hand side of the whiteboard and use the star tool to indicate where you are in the world tonight. Or it may not be tonight where you are. And indicate your location in the chat and what the weather is like and what the time is where you are, if you'd like to. Oh, yes, tornado torn Illinois. Pretty scary, Donna. It wasn't it yesterday. We didn't have a tornado in Northbrook, but it was probably closer to you than us. I'm in Northbrook, Illinois, where it is a pretty dreary November evening, and it's pretty chilly here. It looks like we've got somebody in India, we've got some people in Australia, and hopefully we'll have some more people floating in from all over the world. We have had a lot more people joining from the Middle East and Africa this year, so it's exciting to see people join our community, and I hope that it's probably nighttime, middle of the night where they are right now. So it looks like we've got the whole, we've got Canada there too, and the northern part of South America. That's great. Fabulous. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Colombia, yay! Great. And Mexico. Fabulous. Okay. So you're here to hear is Pam and Jennifer, and you're going to really, really enjoy them. I've gotten to know them over the past year, and they do some fabulous, fabulous work. I am so excited to bring them to you. I'm going to take it over. I'm going to let them take over and take it from here. Thanks for coming, Pam and Jennifer. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Lucy. We love Lucy and everything that you do for everybody, and we're so happy to be with you all tonight from around the world and from around the United States. So thanks for being with us. And so we're going to, Jen and I, we work together. We love to work together. And we're going to tell you a little bit of the story of LitWorld and 4 of the biggest lessons that we've learned from the model that we've created over the last few years, and the exciting changes that are going on in literacy education around the world. LitWorld, I'm the executive director of LitWorld. Jen is one of our senior leaders on the team, and and we both believe very much in this idea of transformational literacy. So just in brief, I'm the author of many books on literacy education, and have founded LitWorld in 2007, and since then our team has grown around the world. And Jen will introduce herself right here.
And I was lucky enough to be with Pam when we launched LitWorld in 2007, those years ago, and as a part of the LitWorld team was developing programming that came to be the center of the LitWorld work, which is very exciting. I spent some time away practicing my research skills in the UK and in Africa, and I'm now back in New York with LitWorld, putting those skills to the test to help constantly improve and grow the work that LitWorld does.
So we're going to take you on a little bit of a journey. Our message, our motto, I think the theme perhaps even for all of us in the work that we all do is this idea of how we be the story, how we are the story. And I think that's a huge piece of what we're going to talk about tonight in regard to this idea of transformational literacy. Hold on, is this how I do that? I don't want to do anything untoward. So one of the things I think that's gotten me the most excited, and I know Jen too, in terms of thinking about the work that we do in the field, we create opportunities for communities in the hardest to reach places oftentimes to create literacy communities for themselves. We provide tools and resources, but really the most important part of the work that we do are the people with whom we work. It's a very human-driven endeavor, the act of teaching and learning. Also for the work that we do, which is social change work on the ground, that work is all about the people on the ground. And so our partners are everywhere from Kenya to the Philippines, to Mexico, to Nepal, to Peru, to right here where we are tonight in the United States, from New York to Detroit to Los Angeles. And so we've had the great privilege of seeing the power of literacy and what it really can do to change people's lives. So I would say at the bottom, at the foundation of all that LitWorld is doing is this idea that what we consider is, there's a lot of innovation and technology in the new era that we are in right now, but that at the end of the day, humankind's greatest innovation is the most mobile, portable, nimble tool that we all have. We all have access, we all have it, the potential for it, and LitWorld's role in the world, as I see it, is to make sure that everyone gets it. And that is that really our greatest innovation is literacy itself, that it's mobile, it's flexible, it's nimble, it survived, thousands of years, and that we can define literacy as reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and even now as viewing. That literacy is this unbelievably nimble tool that can help someone who wants to become a dairy farmer or a software engineer or a teacher or a plumber or a lawyer, that any of these professions are open to all people, but the one tool that we all need and use and hunger for is this tool of literacy. So that's the kind of I think the driving force, I would say, behind LitWorld, that we are in places around the world where there is no technology, and our question is really always, how can we be innovative, where we don't always have access to all the resources we need or we want, but that at the end of the day, there's some fundamental deep belongings that all people have. And probably for us, when we think about these 4 powerful lessons that we've learned in helping entire communities become literacy communities, which is the story we'll tell today, and the examples that Jen will give as we talk through some of the structures that we've created, that we hope will actually be structures you might want to implement in your community, that as a call to action tonight might be interesting ways for you to think about whether you work in a school district or you work in a community-based organization, or you're a mom or dad or grandparent at home, that these are all things that you can do, that we believe that literacy is something that can be conveyed by the community itself, and that is empowered by the human capital in the community. And so our message is strong on that because we have been in so many places where we work You know, we can't rely on any one technology, but what we can rely on is really the first lesson. And that first lesson is the power of story itself. As I've traveled around the world, I always remember a story that is my story, really. The first class I ever taught was a class of deaf students in Brooklyn, New York, and they are a touchstone for me, that first group of children that I taught in New York. They were 7th graders, many of whom came from a lot of different countries, and before they came here did not speak English, did not know sign language. Many of them came without an accessible language for themselves. But when they arrived into my classroom and we started to open up this idea that reading could be theirs, the way that they began that journey was through the power of their own stories. And that was because I knew that was something everyone has. You know, we didn't all share one language. Some of us hadn't had the opportunity to learn, you know, sign language or Spanish or English, but that I knew that every child in that room had a story to tell. And that story is the lever, the engine that drives who we are. Our stories obviously change as we get older, but that we have touchstone stories that affect and impact our lives. And that, as with my first class in Brooklyn, many of whom of my students are still in touch with me on Facebook, which is one of the many things I love about Facebook. Thank you, Facebook. Is that I can be in touch with my beloved students for the rest of their lives, I hope, and my life, and that we have a way to only connect. And that all comes from this idea that you come as a child into the classroom not in a deficit, but in a way that you are an asset to the community. You are an asset, and that is a huge message for children who have been marginalized, who have not always felt like they belong to any one community. And I saw that no more clearly than with my students in the years that I was teaching deaf students, but really for all of us as humankind. I think the reason I went into the teaching of deaf children was because I was very interested in how we communicate and how we connect even when we are so isolated from one another. And I think that's always been my life work. And I urge you to think about for yourselves when you think about a time in your life that you connected with someone or you felt a human connection. And then if we could just to build around that human connection, that sense of that empowerment, that is really what our curriculum should look like in schools. That's what our community-based organizations should be doing for social change. And it all comes back to this idea of stories. I travel in many settings, and this is actually one of our lit clubs Jen will tell you more about, in Kisumu, Kenya, and the girls were taking photographs of their surroundings. And I often say that one of the things that is remarkable to me about the power of literature and the child's own story is this idea that we're going to see through the lens. We're looking through a lens to see both the mirror who we're looking at, which is ourselves, and the window looking out into the world. And that stories provide us with that, whether it's the story of the news or the story of the child in our room or the story of that literature, that iconic text or that new text that we're reading for the first time, that these are ways that we create mirrors and windows for children. These children live very, very difficult lives in very, very harsh conditions, some of which, you know, for me as an educator, as much as I've seen things and I've traveled a lot, I'm always really struck by how resilient children are. In the most dire of circumstances, they hunger for joy and they hunger for learning. And most of all, they do hunger for literacy. They love it. And that's when I know we're really onto something. So just a quick final story before I turn over to Jen, and that is that I believe this is true. When you think about the 5 people, take a minute to think about 5 people that you value or people that you admire in the world, people who you might not know, but maybe they're famous people or maybe they're someone you met at one point in your life that affected you, that those people are probably storytellers, whether they're politicians or business people or teachers or writers, that people changing the world really have to tell a story about why they're doing that and how they're doing that. And so that is one of the reasons why it is important, and I think it's our obligation as literacy educators or educators of all kinds to help our children become storytellers. This image and all of the images that we're sharing are images from our work. This is Angel. She lives in Kibera. She's one of our first Lit World ambassadors. And I've been working with her since she was 2 years old. And this time in August, when we went back to Kibera for some work there, I was a little bit late getting there, as I tend to be, as you know, because I'm only talking to everybody. I was late arriving, and I was worried that my group I was training was going to be waiting for us in the courtyard. And when I rushed in, I saw little Angel reading to her community. And she said to me, Pam, I knew that was a good idea while we were waiting for you to come. And I just thought, if she can grow up to be the storyteller who changes her world, then we will have done our job, that she can have that empowerment, she feels confident, she feels bold. That's where meaning, and that's where the sustainability piece comes for the work that we do. So let's take a minute to turn to Jen, and I want to ask her to talk about lesson number 2.
Lesson number 2 from our work that has really resonated in all that we do is the power of collaboration. And I think that the biggest thing that I've learned about the possibilities for collaboration is that it's an incredible tool to reshape how we think about our own teaching and what learning means in our communities. And to go back for a second, when we think about the value that we place on children's stories, by honoring those stories and by creating a space for them to share their stories, we're really giving them power over their learning lives. They get to define how they come to understand themselves in a reading, writing, speaking, and listening world. And I think by going a step further, collaboration in the classroom or in any learning community allows children to take ownership of what they're learning and how they're learning as well.
Sorry. I thought you were going to show like a nice picture. Right?
I know. I was thinking about that as well. Sorry. So I think what I was saying is that by really bringing kids into the conversation, or whoever the learners in the room are, we get to understand where they are in terms of how they see themselves as learners, and also we get to have them be a part of what we teach and how we teach it. And Lit World has really come to incorporate collaboration on all levels of our work. And the first way that we really discovered the power of collaboration for ourselves was when we created these 7 strengths, these 7 big ideas that began as guiding instructional concepts. We wanted to create touchstone ideas that would allow the children that we work with in vulnerable communities to make connections, feel safe, feel secure, and feel strong in their learning lives. And we started on a leadership level. We talked to teachers and leaders, educational leaders in Iraq and in New York City who were working with children who were really struggling and suffering in the worst of circumstances. And they came up with some ideas that felt powerful and meaningful to them as adults and to them as teachers. And then we took it a step further and decided that we wanted to really know what these big ideas meant to the kids that we worked with. And so we brought them to them and we asked them which stories, the stories about friendship or the stories about kindness, which stories mean the most to you? And what we came away with is this list of 7 strengths that is far better than the list that we created as when we were just adults talking in a room. Because these words really, we found, have meaning for our kids, no matter their age. And we can find stories that bring out these ideas and help them to make connections between these big ideas and their own personal stories and learning lives. And as you can see, the 7 big ideas that we've come away with are belonging and curiosity, friendship, kindness, confidence, courage, and hope. And these ideas started, as I said, as instructional concepts, but have grown into the core values that really drive everything that we do. We try to infuse these ideas into all of our work. And what I really love about the 7 strengths is that you can find stories, really powerful stories in children's literature, but then beyond that, children themselves can create their own stories where they really felt the concept of belonging. They felt like they were a part of the community. And by giving them space to share their stories and then celebrating those moments, suddenly the idea of belonging becomes a really powerful, joyful message within a community.
Yeah, and I think this idea of the sort of narrative framing is what we call it, this idea that you frame your stories when people tell stories of triumph, of hope, of resilience. Studies have actually shown that you become stronger, you become more hopeful, you become more resilient. And so we said to ourselves, what if we created a whole curriculum around this idea that the more we can help cultivate children's positive sense of narrative framing, that is actually going to help them become more resilient. And that has really happened, that a child can, in the most challenging circumstances, say, I'm going to tell this story about myself and my life in a way that feels like it's about belonging, it's about curiosity, it's about hope, it's about courage, and they walk out of that room feeling stronger as a result. It's all authentic. It's all real.
And I think one of the things that I really, one moment that I really loved, I went back to Kibera. I had spent some time there before. I returned to explore how the work was deepening and growing there. And I was talking to 2 girls who had just joined the Lit Club. They were part of a club that had been going on for a few years, but they were new members in the room. And we were talking about the 7 strengths and which strength. A question I always like to ask is, which one do you like the best? Which one is your favorite? And then tell me a story about that for you. And one of the girls, her name was Nancy, and she told me that she loved courage. And a lot of the girls in the group really liked friendship or really liked confidence, but she chose courage, and that was unique in the room. And I asked her, well, why courage? What does that word mean to you? And she said to me that she loved to talk about courage and tell stories about her when she was courageous, because before she came to our club and before she met her new friends, she didn't feel like girls were allowed to be courageous. She didn't feel like you could be a girl and have courage. That didn't feel like something possible for her. But after hearing the stories of her friends and having a chance to tell her own stories, some from her life, but some that she just imagined her life could be like, she suddenly really felt that this was possible for her and wanted that to be part of her story going forward. And to me, that's exactly the power of bringing these ideas out and giving examples and just giving a space to explore what courage could mean for you, what curiosity could mean for you, and how that could reshape how you think, not just about your future, but also about your past.
Yes, that's very true. And I think with that, that idea of your story of the future and your story of the past, I read a study that said that you are 80% more likely to reach a goal when you write it down. And so when you think about the power of writing, what we do in our Lit Clubs, where we bring the girls together and they're actually writing together, reading together, breathing in the reading, breathing out the writing, and it's all around these 7 strengths. That idea is really also about when you write it down, you have the power, and that is a really big idea. I think that not to be underestimated.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think getting the opportunity to have a choice about what you're writing down. So the pen is in your hand and you are in control of what's written completely. And it becomes your story and you own it, and it can change. You can make the change in your life.
And I'll also say this just about the literature, the connection that you mentioned to literature, is that some of the stories, we'll use a lot of local literature where there isn't access to that, and we bring literature. The children will find access easier to a lot of these texts through the themes, through these 7 strengths, and are able to say, you know what, I'm relating that to my own life, or I'm relating that to an experience that is making me also feel like that character is experiencing those similar emotions. But also just that, it's the 7 strengths have helped us in terms of just thinking about literature in new ways. That literature itself is a resilience building tool, and that's kind of a big idea, I think. I really feel that way.
Absolutely. And so to share with you a little bit about how we approach the Lit Clubs and how we bring collaboration into that forum as well. This is a picture of one of our Lit Clubs in the Philippines, and early on in the program we do an activity where everyone traces their hands and then writes something positive about themselves in their hands, and then it becomes a group art piece of all the things that we love about ourselves. And we do this collaborative approach really is the engine that drives the sense of community that the Lit Club really creates. The shared experience that the kids have, experiences that are joyful and exciting and new and different, and allow them to think about themselves as readers, writers, speakers, and listeners in playful and fun and funny and humorous ways, really create a sense of understanding and allow for the young people that we work with to feel connected to one another. And I think that one of the biggest things that we were thinking about when we started to form these clubs and really think deeply about what we wanted to give to these kids was a support system, something that helped them to feel connected to one another and also to their learning lives. And what collaboration does is it cultivates empathy in the classroom, in the learning environment, because when you're collaborating with someone, when you're working together to create something that has meaning for both of you or for all of you in the room, you're practicing how you listen to other people, you're practicing how you understand, and you're doing your best to both understand and be understood. And that process, both sides happening at once, really creates a sense of community that will go far beyond the classroom.
Yes, and it's interesting because, the big initiative around the Common Core Standards is this idea. There is a very big central focus around collaboration in there where speaking and listening, reading and writing, what I call the lit loop, all really go together. And it's interesting, I was just speaking on a panel of executives recently up at a university in Massachusetts, and one of the most common threads among all of us was what we want to see in the workplace is a set of skills. One is collaborative problem solving. That was like number one, that you can actually solve a problem of unknown, outcome together. And that's a lot of what we're thinking about with literacy is like, how can we help our children to solve for problems together, to solve something together, whether using their own stories, bringing together, listening, thinking about each other's stories. The Lit Clubs have a very strong component of civic action to them. So, for example, we recently had a club in Nepal that decided they would like their civic action to be advocating for clean water in their community, and so they got together and they wrote articles about it, and they wrote letters to their community, and the idea was that they were going to be advocates. Well, you can do that with literacy, but as someone once wisely said to me, the IQ of a community is always stronger than the IQ of an individual. And that's really what this collaborative process is like in the lit world communities, is that it's not only collaborative in the community itself, as you see from the children here in the Philippines, but it's actually that from the Philippines to Kenya to New York to Peru to Nepal to Pakistan, to India, that we are all one human community. At the end of the day, these are lines that were drawn by mankind, but actually the real shift in the universe right now is that we are all one human community. That's the real shift.
Yep.
And the real shift of it is that child that's growing up, that you're teaching right now, or that you're parenting right now, is going to grow up, and these children that you see in this picture here might actually be their work colleagues in 10 years from now, because the technology is making us come together, but it means all the more important, we've got to be collaborative problem solvers. We've got to be collaborative.
Absolutely. So this brings us to our third big lesson from our work, and that is the power of reflection. And Pam and I were talking about reflection just before we began.
Oh, can I interject to say, I cannot forget that Columbia, too.
Yeah.
Columbia has amazing lit clubs and Lit World. We love you, Anna, and everybody who's so amazingly engaged with Lit World. And everybody, by the way, listening, we want you all to be involved in the Lit World mission, and so please come to our website. I think Lucy was kind enough to make a link there, as Peggy, I think, did too, litworld.org. But Columbia is so precious to us, and I want to, that map Lucy showed, I want to have our mission, with Lucy's help and everyone on this meeting, to have that map just lit up for Lit World, because that's what we want, that's what we need. With all of us together, we can be a human community. So let's turn to lesson 3. Thank you, Anna.
Is everyone hearing okay? I'm noticing that some people are complaining about the audio.
Oh.
If we need to turn off the video to enhance the audio, Lucy just let us know.
Okay, we should do that. You want to? It looks like people are saying.
Some people are okay. Some people.
I don't know, Lucy. What do you think? Should we turn off the audio? See, no. Let's turn off the video.
So turn off our video, and hopefully that will help us.
Yes.
Tax the internet a little less.
Yes. Well, thank you. Jackie says we're drawing a lot of positive energy with our video. Oh my God. We'll turn it back on in a few minutes. But I think, and I love what Lucy said about we've got to fill in the map. I think that's really the case with this Lit World movement, and with all of you and us together, because we've got a lot of kids around the world, 750 million kids out of school, another 500 million children not learning well enough to graduate. So let's do it together. So let's go to lesson number 3.
So lesson number 3, the power of reflection. As I was thinking with Pam about what reflection means, and I think the wonderful thing about taking time to reflect is that you pause and you think about what you could do better, but you also celebrate what you're doing well and build from that place. And reflection is a wonderful way to stop and think about what you're teaching and what the needs of your learners are, and how you can bring those two things together if they're not quite meeting up. Usually in any learning environment, there's always going to be a new thing around the corner that will make your community even more positive, even more joyful, even more of a learning community. And at Lit World, we love to take those moments to think about how we can bring in more learners into our community. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about in our reflection process is something that Pam mentioned early on, which is that in our work we realized that reading and writing are just half of the literacy pie, and we wanted to make sure in our work that we honored and valued and created space for reading and writing as well as speaking and listening. And by saying to our learners and the communities that we work with that speaking and listening are just as valuable to building literacy skills and building storytelling skills, we were able to be truly inclusive in our community and really tap into the powerful force that families and parents and caregivers can be to promoting and encouraging and supporting young learning lives. And this is actually a picture of a Moms Lit Club that we have in the Philippines. And these women, some of the parents and caregivers that we work with are not confident as readers and writers when they come into the Lit World program, but we wanted to make sure, and they really taught us how much the celebration of oral storytelling and speaking and listening can do to create pathways to reading and writing that last a lifetime.
I also think, Peggy just said something in the chat about the power of listening and how it drives everything. And I think there's just a really strong, even just thinking about the Lit Clubs and a lot of, for example, in this image, a lot of these moms, for the first time being part of a literacy community and feeling so incredibly validated to be, being a good listener is actually a quarter of the pie, as Jen was saying. And that for some of our, whether you teach moms or you're teaching in any community, thinking about your quieter voices in your class and really affirming them as literacy learners and saying your capacity for listening is so strong and so powerful. It's having an impact on this whole community, and that means a lot, and that actually is impacting all of us. I think that child is going to grow 10 feet with that, and that we've seen that over and over and over again in the Lit World work.
Absolutely, and I think what reflection is really about is it's about listening. It's about listening to the needs of your community and listening to the whispers of new ideas and new potential and bringing that into your work and really celebrating the opportunities to listen to the big ideas and listen to the quiet voices both together. And one way that we have chosen to do this at Lit World is to really take the next step with our programming and integrate into the 7 Strengths work and the Lit Club work new technology that can create connections and build confidence around reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And this is actually a picture from a new program that we're piloting in Harlem called Story 21. And what I love about Story 21 is that it is every inch a Lit Club program. It is so much about the 7 Strengths and building community and building confidence as literacy learners. And it's also very much about leveraging all of these new tools that allow us to become confident and allow us to make connections. Because I think, as someone mentioned, I saw in the feed, someone was remembering how when Pam talks about technology, she always talks about the power for it to bring us together. And I think at Lit World, we really recognize that and want to make families as a whole feel comfortable and confident using new technology to bring their families closer together. And this is one of our families, and one of our activities, we start very early on asking our families what they want to learn, because to go back to that collaborative process, it is about collaboration on every level and reflection to stop and think and listen in this way.
And also I think just the idea of that intergenerational listening. I think that it's the transaction you know, parents take so much, you know, obviously parenting is hard work. I do it myself, but it's the most joyous as well. And the fact that we can look at technology as a link to our children rather than as a divider is really key.
Because the big thing about technology now is that for kids, we always talk about how intuitive children are with their use of technology. You can give an iPad to a small toddler, and he or she will be on it using the app and figuring it out. But that child is so much more empowered and so much better able to navigate the world of technology in ways that satisfy their curiosity and build on their learning if they have learning role models in their home. And so when we thought about Story 21, we really wanted to bridge that divide between children who have access to technology for education in the classroom, children who have access to technology at home for their learning, but also children who have access to role models at home who can guide them through the technology and find ways to really learn and explore and become confident learners on technology.
I guess, yeah, and I would just add one thing to that, to say that I think one of the things, and I think Lucy has really been inspiring for our global community in this way, is that everybody is a learner in the technology world, so that the parent who might have been insecure about her own reading skills is suddenly a more authentic learner in front of her son.
Absolutely.
And she's able to kind of like be herself a lot more instead of hiding. And there's a way in which everyone is a co-learner, as you said. And so there's a certain level of authenticity in the literacy experience that I think I wasn't seeing, because in so much always, and it's always been a preoccupation for me when parents and children came together for your typical traditional literacy night, because I think with the tablet between them, everybody is a co-learner and it makes things feel more authentic, and I think that's really valuable.
Absolutely, and children get to see their parents exploring their own learning interests and really taking on new ways to read and write and find information. And even as teachers, we can engage in this very authentic learning process with our students as well, because sometimes there are moments when we also are learning with technology, because there is also always new things that we can bring into our teaching, new elements, new ways that we can use technology.
Yes, and so one of our Moms Lit Clubs in Kibera is the women that you see right here. And they, you know, I asked them about 3 years ago, these are amazing, amazing women. They're HIV positive women. They live a positive life. They want me to share with everybody, and they really do. And they work very hard, but one of the things they do in their work together is they do people's hair, and they make beads, beautiful beaded necklaces and things. And they really wanted to learn to read and to learn with us, so that they could create a website and also be in touch with people in a way that would be important for them. They have been very marginalized. All the money that they earn goes into a community pot that the women share with each other. And when one of them gets sick, they give that money to that woman. And so there's a huge sense of generosity. I mean, if anybody knows the 7 Strengths, it's the Moms Lit Club in Kibera.
And they are the most joyful women you could ever hope to be with. They always are singing and laughing and loving one another. They just show so much love to one another, their families. They are a true community of learners, and they exemplify the 7 Strengths.
Yes,
absolutely.
And they really connected to them immediately. And I think that, you know, one of the things about this is we do a lot of community read-alouds with them by video Skype. This was a picture of us getting set up for the video Skype. But this idea of the read-aloud, we read aloud to them, they read aloud to us. the way everyone is practicing. The Read Aloud is an experience that can wash over all of us together and bring our community together. I think the Read Aloud, Lucy had posted the link for World Read Aloud Day, I think, and that is, for us, a very important day. It's the first Wednesday in March. We hope you'll all join us for that this year by coming to litworld.org and letting us know you'd like to register. The Lit Club Power Women, the Kibera women would be very appreciative. They believe in the power of the Read Aloud. It does bring them together, but it brings them together with us. And one of the things I'll just, with this just to say is that in terms of the power of reflection is for women like the Power Women in Kibera living a very, very hard life to use technology as a reflective tool, to take a moment to say, who am I? What is it that I want? What are my hopes and dreams? When they're living in such a community-based way, they're worrying about their children, they're worrying about their health, they're worrying about their friends' health. To use the technology to actually be a literacy reflective person is a pretty powerful force of change, and for them it's been incredibly transformational, and also for all of us to be accompanying them and for them to be accompanying us. So the last lesson.
The final lesson.
The final lesson. There's always more lessons. But, so,
back.
Oh, good. Hi, everybody. So finally, just to bring, what we'll do is I'll talk about the power of joy, and Jen, pitch in where you see fit, but just, I would say, just for a few minutes, and then we'll save the last 8 minutes or so to open up for dialogue, or if people want to chat in, or we can give you some last little tidbits of information. But lesson 4 is this idea of the power of joy. This may sound really simple, but one of the sort of main premises of Lit World is I wanted children to have fun. And everyone was like, I know, but we have to collect data, and we've got to, really, this is all very serious. And I was like, yes, but when you think about anything you've learned over the last life, your entire life, basically, if you think about that, and you think about when you weren't having fun, you probably didn't do a very good job learning how to do it. But as soon as you started to experience the joy of it, when I think about just the things that my grandparents have taught me, or my parents have taught me, the sense of what has felt good to me. My mother read to me as a child, when I was a child, and that sense of that early joy was what propelled me into this field. And the same is true whether it's about cooking or about gardening or about the work that you do, teaching, that when you start to get that sense that this feels like a hinge of joy, is when that learning is starting to feel effortless. And Lit World really puts a huge value on joy. And so in other words, when I say to my staff, when something's feeling so hard it feels really bad, you've got to turn away from that and towards the joy. And what is the joy? The joy is in reading books that mean something to you, in writing in a way that's about something you really care about. This young woman is in one of our Lit clubs, and she was speaking at our Stand Up for Girls event in the fall. And this is a powerful moment for her. She's in a public place. She loved every minute of it, as you can tell by her image. But I said to my team, and we talk about this a lot, people feel joy when they can share. Absolutely. I feel joy right now just being with all of you, and I think that's because I love to share the work of Lit World. I love to know that people are listening and that people will participate. The same goes for a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old. And the question in my mind is always, how can I create structures for teaching and curriculum around joy as the centerpiece? People who come to our events always say it's just the most happy, most joyous experience, And I say that's not an accident. I was very deliberate. My team is very deliberate in creating that structure for joy. And so I would encourage all of us to think about, even in the hardest of circumstances, how can we make our students, how can we create joy in the environment? And that is what, number one, I believe the Read Aloud does, as you see in this beautiful picture. 2, I believe that collaboration, as Jen was talking about, creates joy. Sometimes collaboration is not so easy. I mean, we all know that. Like sometimes, you're working together, you're like, okay, I don't know, I agree with that. But I think that even to say to students, that should bring joy. Like if I don't agree with someone or something didn't go well today in our collaboration, like for me, there is something, I love that. I feel like we're going to solve a problem, and I really think that's exciting. But we need to model that for our students. That's so, just as we come to a close together, we did create World Read Aloud Day in 2008. We started in New York with a celebration here in New York. We just want to feel the joy of reading aloud. We know that it closes the word gap. We know that reading aloud unites people, that it helps people read at higher levels of comprehension. We know that even 1 year of reading aloud every day to a child puts them a year ahead in school against all other children, and that accounts for differences in educational backgrounds of families, cultural backgrounds, socioeconomic. That was a study that just came out this year, and I'm happy to post that on our Facebook page if people are interested to see that study. So we're not just, joy doesn't mean we're not serious, right? Joy doesn't mean that we're not rigorous. Joy is actually the key to everything, and one of the things that we've done in World Read Aloud Day is say, we're going to make this day be about the joy so people can feel what it's like, so they get down to the rigorous work of what the reading, literacy, writing experience feels like. This was a scene from World Read Aloud Day in Harlem. We had a special guest, Clifford the Big Red Dog was there, as you know.
Very exciting.
Very special guest. And we were, absolutely delighted and stunned to know that we've had, this past year, we had 60 countries celebrate. And we had every single state of the U.S. celebrate. But this year, let's triple it, let's quadruple it, let's make that joy grow, because I think with the power of joy, we can actually change the world. And that's the first Wednesday in March.
And the thing about joy, I just want to add on to that, is that you work harder, you go farther, you push further when you're loving what you're doing, when you're really connecting with the people around you and feeling good and happy, and that energy is so powerful, and to harness that energy to the very real need of reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills, the skills we need to communicate, to express ourselves, to define who we are and what we need, infusing that hard work with joy and positive energy will only help these little dancing girls go so much farther, because they already feel it. They're not more than 10 years old, and they already feel the joy and the power that their joy can have over communities around the world.
And this joy comes from learning. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I want children to see the connection between learning and joy. This day, they were celebrating with us Stand Up for Girls, and we asked them to celebrate the women and girls in their lives. And tell stories about a girl or a woman who had impacted them. And that is a cause for joy. In a hard situation, a hard place to live, everyone has the capacity for it, and plus, it's what keeps us all going. So we're going to end right there, opening it up for a few minutes of questions, if people have any, or just thoughts or anything anyone wants to add on. Remember, our motto is Be the Story, and that idea of activating the community. These are all the ways that you can reach us. Jen has just joined Twitter, so really important to go see Jen on Twitter, because she's like, is anyone going to come? I'm like, yes, they will come. It's like that baseball player, So please find us in all these ways. We love to be with you, and we would love for you to be the story with us. So thank you for having us. Any questions before we wrap up? So you know what? We're glad that we could all be together. I'll just leave us with one final thought, and that is to say we have our Seven Strengths work is yours too. So one of the things that I think I am now. I've joined. I'm going to be a part of the tweeting community. I'm committed. She's so in. So, well, okay, well, thank you, everybody. And, wait, where'd you go? Jen just pushed a button that sent us off into the other world. Anyway, so thank you for being with us. Please do the story with us. Jen, come to the world. There will be a chapter going everywhere. Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes, I can hear you. We're going to turn off our video and see if that helps.
Okay. Oh, that's nice.
Hey. Hey, Jen.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My audio is going in and out. I do have, if you can hear me, I have one question. How do people establish a Lit Club? If they want to do a Lit Club in their own community, is there a way for people to do that?
Absolutely. So the way that a Lit Club begins is with a motivated individual who contacts us. We have a forum at litworld.org, and through that forum you can share with us a little bit about yourself and your community, and we can get you started with training and materials that will help you launch the Lit Club. And Lit World staff supports new Lit Clubs with ongoing training and professional development to Lit Club leaders. We really believe that any caring, committed individual who shares our values can lead a Lit Club, and we support leaders, teachers, leaders, and community leaders around the world in that process.
Can you guys hear us okay? Oh, great. Okay.
Got it. A little bit of a
lag.
wrap
things up really quickly. And thanks for coming, everyone. You have their information if you'd like to wrap up with them. And we'll stop the recording now.
Thanks, everyone.